Well, good morning, and I want to thank you all for your work this week. It's been a busier week as the governor has released his budget, and I also want to let you know, not probably in the vein of breaking news, but it is the governor's birthday tomorrow, so we can wish him all a happy birthday. I think this week marked the balance or the beginning of our work to tackle the job, our first priority, which is balancing the budget for the state of Minnesota, and I think we're off to a pretty good start. I want to say that again, we are very proud of the work that the governor has done in putting together what we see as a very comprehensive budget that reflects his priorities and our priorities, and we believe Minnesotans' priorities for the state of Minnesota. We think that he addresses the issue of property tax relief, he addresses the issue of a strong education system from early ed, higher education, and some tuition relief for families, middle-class families, which we think is very important. And most importantly, after decades of balancing the budget with gimmicks and deep cuts, we're finally putting together a budget. He's put together a budget that addresses our state going forward, the priorities of Minnesota without those gimmicks. And we're really proud of that work. We share those priorities. Legislators are going to have their own ideas about this budget. And those of us who have been through this legislative process before know that. And the governor has been very clear with us that he is open to ideas, he's looking for ideas, and he's going to consider our ideas. And I think the budget that we put together will be a compilation of the work that he's done and the work that we are going to do together. Again, focusing on those same priorities that we've heard from Minnesotans and making sure that we're preparing for a better future for the state of Minnesota. Members are heading home. I think that they have given a lot of thought to what they've seen in the governor's budget. They're going to visit with their constituents over the weekend and start to listen to them and get their reaction, and that's going to inform our discussion. And I just want to say one more time, it's going to take us some time to put this budget together, but I know you all know that because you've been through this drill before. I think it's important that we do the job well, not fast. And so we're going to be deliberative in our process. Next week, you'll see committees getting to work looking at the budget, especially the Ways and Means Committee is going to take a look at the budget with MMB. We're going to see another hearing of the Health Insurance Exchange in the Government Ops Committee, and I think Alice Hausman is going to be looking at capital restoration. And with that, I'm going to step aside, let Jeff Hayden talk, and we'll take your questions. And I'm glad to see you all. Thank you.
Good to see you guys on a wonderful Friday. It feels like a heat wave out there after all the cold weather. I just want to reiterate what Majority Leader Murphy said. In the Senate, we're taking the same approach. We do believe that the governor's budget reflects the values of the Senate and most certainly Minnesotans. It isn't a surprise kind of what was in the governor's budget. I mean, though we'll kind of go through it line by line, and we've heard from our members that for the most part, they believe in the values of what the governor is trying to do, though, as always, especially in the Senate, we're going to go through it line by line and figure out if it works for members. We haven't had a lot of conversation about it. We've had one caucus since then, and there are a lot of things that we talked about. The chairs are looking forward to going through the budget books. We've been doing that starting this week in the committees that I belong to. They'll continue to do that. We're getting our freshmen up to speed on both sides of the aisle so that we can have a great conversation about this budget and how we move Minnesota forward. We're especially excited that it really puts us into a situation where we have a structural, we don't have a structural problem moving forward in that we're not using shifts or gimmicks in order to keep Minnesota prosperous. In the Senate this week, we'll continue to look at the budget. We also are planning to have the healthcare exchange in the Commerce Committee, and we'll continue on with confirming our commissioners. This week we confirmed Mr. Showalter and former Senator Poggemiller. We'll continue with that process. Most of those folks have been in the job well over a year, so we don't think that there'll be much problems with that. I don't have much more to add. I know you guys probably had a lot of questions, so we just wanted to thank you for being here.
I was going to say a question for both of you. You already said the broad areas of agreement on values with the governor. Can you give us an area or two that you know your caucuses will deviate significantly from his budget on? Just a couple of examples.
Well, one place where I think our caucus feels strongly about that is slightly different than the governor is on the repayment of scholarship. We heard a lot about that over the course of the summer and the fall, and I think Minnesotans, that for them really crystallized their frustration with the budgeting process of the last decade, and they would like to see that paid back, and we think it's important.
Just by any?
Yeah, I think, the governor pays it back in his budget, he just does it in the next biennium, and I think we'd like to be a little more aggressive on that. We also think it's important to invest in education. Minnesotans are really concerned about the quality of the schools. When you think about how many kids are in classes and schools at 4-day school weeks, and, some all-day kindergarten just being every other day. I talked to a teacher yesterday, and there was a 5-day break between when he sees his kids on a Wednesday until the next Monday. They're concerned about that, so I think we have to do both. Our commitment to paying back the shift, but we also have to take a look at investing in education, and the governor does that, and we agree with him on that.
Could you be a little more
Well,
specific on this?
can you let him answer, can you let him answer, Chief, please? Thanks.
Well, I know that we, on the property tax issue, I know that I've heard members just kind of anecdotally, and I know I've heard the majority leader talk about really taking a good look at that and figuring out if the governor's plan, which is to give everybody a rebate, makes sense, or should we target that? Should we means test it? So I think that that's something that will be a point of a lot of conversation. I know that Senator Bach is a kind of a tax expert, and Senator Skoye. Both will kind of, I'm not saying that that's their position, but they're very interested in taking a look at that to make sure we maximize the spending that we're doing and reducing property tax.
Now, could you be a little more specific on the payback of this bullshit? Do you expect to do all of this by end?
Thank you, Rachel. Our members are really committed to paying back the shift, as I said, and I think we're going to take it in the context of both the shift and investment in schools. So I'm not going to commit to paying back the entire shift in this biennium, but we are going to address the shift.
Would the payback moderate the investment in education, or would you kind of look at the governor's proposal as a spending target for education?
I think we're going to look at the spending for education in a way that meets the priorities of Minnesotans. So we're not going to set what the governor's put down as a frame for ourselves. We're going to make an investment based on what our members think is the right direction for education for the state of Minnesota.
The governor's budget talks about raising cigarette taxes, but he doesn't mention any other sin taxes. Is there any interest in your caucuses in maybe taking a look at liquor taxes or other sins?
Well, I think members have kind of are thinking about it. We've talked a lot about the alcohol tax not being raised since 1996. I think that we're trying to figure this out as a package, as you all know, and where if we start to, I think Senator Bach said it quite eloquently last week or 2 weeks ago, if you start pulling away at the Afghan, then everything goes away. So I think we want to try to figure out what's the kind of right mix of taxes, period, and much less sin taxes. I'm concerned about the regressivity of the cigarette tax and what that would mean for the alcohol tax. On the other side, I know that people have a tendency to start to change their behavior in terms of smoking if the cigarettes get to a certain level, and serving on the health committee, that's pretty important to me. But that's the kind of conversation that not only will tease out the tax committee, but I think we'll have that conversation in the Health and Human Service Committee as well.
Today, our members haven't really been talking about specific sin taxes.
There was a suggestion on Tuesday that there might be some hearings out state or do some other kind of mechanisms for engaging those Minnesotans who aren't directly represented in this building by lobbyists. I wonder if those plans have gone forward and if you can share those with us at this time.
We haven't made specific plans, but our members are going home this weekend with that intention. And, they're going to have having town hall meetings and forums within their districts. So we know that we're going to get input from Minnesotans, and, just for the heck of it, I'm going to do some door knocking this weekend on my own time in greater Minnesota, so I'll have a chance to also take the pulse of Minnesotans at home.
I don't know if I'll make the commitment to door knocking in northern Minnesota. To be honest with you. However, I will say that we have encouraged our members, working with Assistant Majority Leader Sieben, we've been, working with the caucus on this very issue, making sure people have their town halls set up, making sure that they have the information that they need to go back to the districts and talk about the governor's budget and kind of seek ideas from their communities. So as we start these deliberations, we have as much information as possible.
Does that door knocking happen to be into vacant house districts? I mean, you're not just going out to random districts.
I am well known for the love of door knocking, so I probably will be in a couple of, regional centers. But yes, I do like to do that. So it might not be the last time.
What about the level of spending in the governor's plan? Do you support that? Do you think it's too much? I mean, obviously it's going 1 billion over what you have to do in terms of erasing the deficit, or 1 billion, excuse me, over erasing the deficit. Is that going too far?
It is, the governor's budget is a large document, right? And it's a little abstract right now as we're digging into it. And so it's easy, I think, to try and measure the budget by its size and the number, how much spending there is, or how much taxes there are. But we need to do the harder work of figuring out what it means for Minnesotans and what the results of the budget would be on the lives of Minnesotans, especially middle-class Minnesotans. And that is a longer study for me than the last 3 days have provided. So I can't answer your question about is it too much or is it just right, because I need to better understand the impact on Minnesotans and our future. And so with that, I'm going to hold on answering your question.
Well, understanding that the full budget needs to be looked at, do you, by your caucus, do you as majority leader support the sales tax base expansion that the governor took?
So I think as the majority leader, our members are taking a look at that. They like that they like the idea that the rate is lower and the base is flattened. I think there's a lot of data, policy data that supports that. But the caucus hasn't taken a position on that. They're taking a look at it along with the other revenue items and the spending items in the budget. And as Senator Hayden has said, you have to take it as a whole. You have to take the document as a whole and what it means for the priorities of Minnesotans. So we will consider it in that context.
Just to follow up on that, I think some of the details were released last night about what specifically is covered by that sales tax and what things, the burden becomes lower on and so on. So either of you did anything on that list? Did you get a chance to review that, and did anything on the list raise red flags?
And is this the list of things that are exempted from the sales
Yeah,
tax?
they put out detail on stuff that's going down, stuff that's newly covered and so on.
I have to tell you that the list of where things are going down, I had a look at that this morning, and there's a lot of things that are not on this list where the sales tax rate is going to go down because they're lowering the rate on everything that a sales tax is applied to, which is not exempt. But the list, things like nail polish and speedboats and shovels and crayons and hula hoops, I think it's a good list. It's, I think, indicative of the many items that Minnesotans are purchasing on a regular basis where the sales tax rate is going to go down. And I think that's why the governor is very clear that he does not believe that his proposal, the budget as a whole, is going to raise taxes on middle-class Minnesotans. The list is long, and it's everyday items that people purchase in their everyday lives.
What about the newly covered list, though?
Which,
The other one, the one that, things that are now covered that weren't before.
I don't have that list.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I have the list of things that are exempt and the things where the rate has been lowered.
Okay.